This video is made possible by donations to the United States Lighthouse Society from people like you.
Since how this was kind of my idea, what I'd like to do is go through a few remembrances that I have and things that were just kind of like made Glen sort of an icon, and then go through some of the older tours. And I got a few photos from some of those from various people, and if you would pipe in and if you were on that tour and have anything that you would like to share about that tour, that would be great. And then toward the end, if you've got any other stories you would like to share with us about our friend Glen, that would be wonderful too. So I just want to go ahead and start. And anytime you want to pipe in, just kind of wait for a break. And we're just going to try to let, you don't have to raise your hand, just start talking, and, hopefully we can do this without talking over each other a lot.
Say something, let me know.
My cover photo here, Glen there at the.
Yeah, let me talk over you for a second. While we're doing this, though, if everybody can mute themselves, but if you want to say something, then unmute yourself, and it'll help with the background noise. So that's my only comment. Okay, go ahead, Ted.
As we go through these, I'm sure some of you will remember or recognize where these photos are taken. The one here at the Chesapeake Tower was actually on a tour we did of the Outer Banks, but as usual, Glen had a tendency to just show up for like one day. If there was one lighthouse he wanted to see on a tour and didn't want to take the tour, he'd just show up for the one he wanted. The one in the lower left here is in the Thousand Islands area up in New York, and he was on that tour, so that one counted. One of the things Glen loved to do was, be at the top of lighthouses. I have more pictures than I know what to do with of him waving, from the top of a lighthouse. Various ones here from the Gulf Coast one here on the top right, Scotland, you can see him right here. That green jacket, I swear from the day I met him, he had that green jacket and that same green hat that he wore most of the time. So this picture of him here with the black shirt, I never saw him in a black shirt except for on this one tour in Ireland. He also loved climbing stairs, and here are a couple of memories of climbing different lighthouses, one in Ireland, and this one is perfect because the docent's right here, and of course Glen's right there in his face, making sure that he's the first one to the top. That was always one of his goals, was to get up there and be the first one to the top. If he had to wait, he was kind of impatient about it. It was sort of like, just let me climb, then you can talk all you want. That's kind of the way he was with those. Of course, Glen spent a lot of time on the high stool, as the guys in Ireland told us. As a matter of fact, the photo here on the lower left is at a pub in Northern Ireland. There he is with that black shirt on again. But as I said in my little tribute on Facebook, he never met a beer he didn't like. And it's funny, no matter what everybody else was drinking, he was always drinking beer. The one in the lower right corner here, Mary Borkowski, this is Mary right here. I almost didn't recognize her. This is back from about 2004, I believe. But again, it looks like wherever he is here, I think it was in South Africa, it looks like he's drinking Guinness there. That was his beer of choice. And of course, when he went to Ireland, that was one of his favorite things. One of my favorite photos is the one on the top left here that when we were in the Orkneys, and the first night we spent in the Shetlands at the Busta Hotel, he discovered all these brands of beer that are brewed in Orkney or Shetland, and saving the labels for Steve Valder, and he was lining them up here, and then he'd haul all those bottles to his room and soak off the labels so he could take them home. And this, you know, and I think I helped him drink a couple of these. I don't think he drank all of those, but I think I gave him some help on some of those. But this was one of Glen's favorite activities. A couple other ones here. The one in the top right came from, I'm trying to remember who sent me that. It might have been Mary Lou. This was in France.
That was Sarah, one of the Sarahs.
Oh, that's right. Sarah Rankin sent this because it combined Glen's two favorite things. There's a beer in here and ice cream. And, you know, we had thought, well, maybe he would just pour the beer over the ice cream and that would really satisfy him. The one on the top left came from Mary Lou Fortain. Not sure where that is, but he's drinking beer there. I can guarantee you, oh, this one was in.
I think that one was Jamaica, Skip.
This one here?
The
top left one?
Yeah.
I didn't even know we did a trip to Jamaica.
Excuse me, Puerto Rico.
Oh, Puerto Rico. Okay, that makes sense. And here, the one on the bottom left here with his buddy Steve and Mary and Chad was on a northern, the Lake Huron tour. The first one that we actually had something to do with leading. Quick story on that tour. On that tour, Glen put his bag out by the bus very early on to get it, make sure it was loaded up. And when we were in Detroit, and when we got to Mackinac, which is a pretty good haul away, and all the bags came off the bus, his wasn't there. And, you know, Glen was a nice guy, but if he got a little irritated, he could get a little cranky. And having left his bag behind is no wonder. But what we found out happened is when he came out with his bag, he set it down behind this van that was going to the airport. And it got loaded up in that van. And between the time the van went to the airport, came back with it, the bus had departed. But Glen said, well, the bag was gone. So he figured it was on the bus. So we were stuck there, and we contacted the hotel back in Detroit, who had to forward the bag. I want to remember, it's probably like the Tawas or something like that, but it wasn't going to be there for a couple of days. So Glen had literally the shirt on his back and the shorts he had, and that was all he had. But he quickly went out and bought 3 Lighthouse t-shirts and probably some new skivvies or whatever, and managed to get the bag back to him. But he was 3 or 4 days without any of his toiletries or whatever. Hilarious. Now this looks familiar for most people. The Glen at the Dairy Queen on Whidbey Island on a Puget Sound tour. The night he led a charge, we were at a hotel, or actually at a restaurant, a Chinese restaurant, eating dinner. And Glen started grumbling about, we need to have a Dairy Queen. So we located a Dairy Queen and loaded about 35 or 40 people into our bus, drove to that Dairy Queen, and just overran this place. Anybody that was on that tour will remember that. And unfortunately, this gal at that time was the only one working. I mean, it was 9 o'clock at night on a Wednesday or something, and you wouldn't think that they would have that kind of customers roll in there. But actually, but there was a gal at the Chinese restaurant who called the Dairy Queen and warned them that there were these 40 crazies coming there to buy Dairy Queens. And when we were standing there looking, and Glen ordered this Blizzard, And Mary Lee said, Glenn said to the guy, hold it upside down. Mary Lee said, no, it'll fall out. But I said, nah, no, it won't. So that's why she's holding it upside down.
Shows you how thick it is.
Another thing Glenn loved to do, of course, was to climb into the driver's seat of the boat in the Gulf Coast. Those of you who were on that will remember the Seahawk, which was the boat we took out to the Birdfoot Delta of the Mississippi to some of those offshore lighthouses. And it was a boat that that they took workers out to the oil rigs in. And boy, did he love that, because they let him drive that thing for a while. The one on the left was in Northern Ireland. He wasn't quite as willing to let Glenn drive it, but of course Glenn was up there ragging on him. The one down here on the left was in Lake Ontario, where he actually stole the captain's hat, and the captain let him drive around the lake there a little bit. And then this, I think, was his favorite. I just love this position he's in here. Like, okay, I got this. We were in Cedar Keys. We had to rent pontoon boats to take them out because we couldn't get on the island because the birds were nesting. And as a result, we got these 4 or 5 pontoon boats. And I asked him, would you want to pilot one of them? Of course, he jumped at the chance. And here he is, steering that thing. But as Mary Lee reminded me today, the other 2 or 3 boats were all out by the lighthouse, and this one was nowhere to be seen. So we didn't know what had happened to it, but somehow he got hung up coming out there, but eventually showed up and was in all his glory. All right, now, this evidently was Glenn's first trip, and I'm gonna let Jeff talk about how Glenn got on this trip.
Well, it's not much of a story. Glenn, as I got to know him, I found was very impulsive in a good way, not in a bad way. And his very first tour was an impulsive decision. He found out about it about a week before the trip actually left and called the society office and asked if there was still room on the tour. And within a few days, he had bought his tickets and was ready to go. So he joined the 2003 New Zealand tour very, very at the last minute. And that kind of set him on the path for going on so many trips and becoming one of our Lighthouse Society celebrities, I should say. But that's the only story I have about, because I started volunteering at the society in 2003. In 2004, late, I started working there. So this actually tour operated before I was officially working there. So, but it was the one tour Glenn always talked about. He loved this tour. And I think most people who are on it felt the same way. It was just a great trip. It was led by Dave Snyder, who was an excellent tour leader. So he got hooked on this trip.
Can somebody tell me what Glenn's doing in this picture up on the upper left?
The Maori greeting was to touch noses. So this guy is greeting us all as we get off the bus.
Okay, well, that makes sense. Who's in the other picture, Mary?
Let's see, that's Irene Robertson, Audrey Connor, and I don't know the man's name, but he was Glenn's roommate.
Who is that? It looks awful familiar. So Glenn found a roommate that quick, huh?
Yeah.
Poor guy.
Glenn almost didn't make it to New Zealand. Not on that trip. All of us flew on the same plane to New Zealand from Los Angeles, and none of us knew Glenn. And somehow his plane was delayed, and he just made it on the plane at the last minute. And Dave was telling us that he didn't know if Glenn was going to join us or not. And then when we got to New Zealand, he was there.
That's pretty typical. These, I think, Mary, you sent me these too, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Anybody remember things about the South Africa 2004 tour?
Well, again, Glenn was the first one up at the top of the lighthouses. And he was the first one in the bar. It's just typical Glenn.
Where were you going down here in this boat?
We were either going to the game preserve in Botswana or going back over to whatever country it was on the other side, Zimbabwe or something like that. This was the ferry across the river.
Oh, that's the ferry.
Yeah.
It looks like in that lower right picture that he's reading a beer bottle.
I think talking to the lightkeeper there, and it could be a beer bottle.
Asking him what's on in there. All right. Then, Jeff, this was the first one that you were on with him, wasn't it?
Yeah, Melissa and I, this is England 2006 was the first international tour that Melissa and I operated without any help or anything. And the first person I met on this tour before the trip was Darlene Chisholm, who I didn't know at all. And this person started sending these emails about the tour and complaining about how we were doing it wrong. And little did I know how wonderful a person she would end up becoming, an important person in our lives. But that was my first experience with the England tour. And then the second experience was Glenn. It was the day after it was the first morning of the first excursion. We were going to go to Trinity House from our hotel in England. If you guys remember, I don't know, we were on the tour, we didn't have any power at that hotel. The power was out. Everybody's a little bit kind of grouchy, and no hot showers, and alarm clocks didn't work. Wake-up calls were non-existent. Anyway, so we because it was my first tour, I was a little bit inexperienced, and I counted everybody on the bus, and I had the right number, so I told the driver to go ahead, and I think we did a little bit of a tour before we got to Trinity House. And Trinity House, if you're not familiar with it, is this very stately mansion that is more or less a museum now. And we pulled up, I was sitting in front of the bus with Melissa, and we pull up to the front gates, and it's basically empty. We were there right when they right when they opened. And I hop out of the bus. We all kind of gather at the front gates to take pictures, and out the front doors of Trinity House comes this silver-haired man with his cargo shorts and white t-shirt. And I figure he worked there. I thought this is very casual, but he ends up walking out, and the first words out of his mouth were, "Now who is this Jeff Gales?" And that was the first thing he said. And basically what had happened is I counted the bus driver and not him, and left him at the hotel. And he ended up walking from the hotel, which was a number of miles away, to Trinity House, which is an example of how agile he was. He was always one of the members, tour people, was always first ahead of the pack. He was always one of the great walkers, always wanted to do the hikes, always the first one at the top of the lighthouse. And it really was only the past couple of years that he slowed down a little bit. But he was always very, very active. And that was the first time I met him. And I was, from that point forward, we always had a great relationship because he never let me forget it.
Here's your group photo from that particular tour, which is a really cool one, I guess. I'm trying to figure out how Phil got in this position if he took this photo.
I actually took that picture. I remember taking that.
Oh, you're not in it.
No, I had to. Oh, I'm in it. No,
There you are, right here.
maybe.
I didn't take that
That's a-
picture. I didn't take it.
That's a young Jeff Gales right there.
Yeah, that's with all my
Holy
hair.
doodle. But I can just see Phil running over here and going over that cliff, you know? That
Well,
is really-
Phil notoriously is off, was always off on, not that this is about Phil, but he always is off somewhere. I would always remember seeing Phil away from the group on some cliff somewhere, taking a picture.
Like-
Nobody else.
Like he'd be up here, huh?
Exactly.
Before we leave Glen, New Zealand, one of the things that Glenn liked to do was tell you how long he'd been divorced, and then he'd longer than he'd been married. And he could tell you,
Longer than we'd been married.
he'd tell you to the day and probably to the hour if he wanted it.
That is true. That is true.
But what did he say about, he had some saying that he loved to talk about being divorced. And I don't, maybe it was just how long he'd been divorced, but just seemed like, like best day of his life or whatever. I don't remember what it was, but he was constantly, telling you that. This one, this is the first international tour Mary Lee and I went on. This one to the Orkney and Shetland Islands, and I remember this again a lot because this is the first time that we met Glenn, and actually I'll never forget sitting down in the bar at the Glasgow Holiday Inn Airport, and this guy right here, actually these two guys were sitting there, and I sat down, of course, didn't know either one of them, and they were talking, and I thought, and Phil's got his usual, outfit on, and I thought, oh boy, this is really cool. Says, I'm sitting between a wannabe railroad engineer and a goober from the South, and I thought, this is really going to be something of a tour, And boy, I tell you, it wasn't long before I fell in love with both of them. And this tour turned out to be, all the ones we've been on since, probably one of my most favorite. The picture on the lower left here, where Phil is taking a picture of me taking a picture, with Glenn in the middle here, his signature green hat with a whole bunch of pins on it, and that sort of green jacket. I think this was left over from the military. And this particular photo here, one of the really nice photos we have of one of the group shots, this one being from the Shetland Islands. Glenn was always easy to pick out of these photos because, well, as long as Bob Knight wasn't there, because of the white hair, and you could always see that a mile away, and it was easy to recognize him. Now, here's where he was in his element. When he got to Northern Ireland, and when we got to Ireland, and we got to tour the Guinness factory, this is him right here. You talk about somebody that wanted to be in the front of the line for the tasting part. That was Glenn. And what Mary was saying about, and Jeff saying about Phil being Glenn being the first one, here's a picture of everybody hiking up to this lighthouse. And of course, this is Glenn right here. I could never understand how a guy could drink that much beer and be able to walk that much and that far and just never seem to show, getting tired of it. So I remember this a lot because in this particular trip, there were quite a few of these long walks, and he was pretty much always there first.
But, for Glenn, drinking the beer wasn't just about drinking beer. It was about the social part of it and getting together and
Well, that's
having
true.
good chats.
And I never saw him get out of control. I mean, and he was just, it was the bartender, the barmaids, the locals, whoever was sitting there. Oh, here he is in his black shirt again. If I remember right, this is the only picture we have of a group shot of a tour that was on a light shift.
And do you remember that light ship was the only one that I've ever been on that actually had a actual bar on it that served alcohol.
Yeah, and we sat down there and drank beer. The Texas 2012, didn't really have a lot of pictures of this one. I'm not sure why. Well, first of all, there's only like 4 lighthouses in Texas. Here's Glen at the top of Aransas Pass. And when we went out to Matagorda Island, it took us out in a pickup truck after we rode in some small fishing boats to get out here. Again, his usual outfit that he's got on. And this was the one, a group shot from Sabine Pass, showing Glen over here. And those of you who were there on that one, remember the muddy ride out to this because it had been raining and some people took us out there in their cars, but it was pretty muddy on that particular trip. This particular trip had more Dairy Queens per mile than any other trip we were on. Glen was in every small town we went through in Texas had a Dairy Queen. I mean, there'd be one stoplight, but there would also be a Dairy Queen. And Glen just went berserk because, of course, every time we went through a town with a Dairy Queen, everybody had to yell at him that there's a Dairy Queen. And of course, then he'd try to get the driver to stop. If we'd stopped at every Dairy Queen, we'd have never got through that tour. This was in Lake Ontario in 2011. This is the first tour that we did that I did of Lake Ontario. The one main thing that I remember he loved and everybody loved about this tour is staying at I think it was the Marriott or whatever up on the 18th floor overlooking the falls, and we happened to be there on the night they shot off the fireworks. Here he is in that same jacket. He just took, here he's actually got a collar on his shirt. Now that's unusual. Normally you find Glen with a t-shirt on.
That's probably a farewell dinner or something.
Usually a Lighthouse t-shirt. Australia in 2014. Put this one in here. Glen was one of the bag boys whenever he was on a tour. Those of you that have been on these tours know that people helped get your bags off the bus, and he was always one of the ones first off the bus to help us, load and unload bags. This one was a long tour. This is a good picture we had of it down here. Nice picture of, I think this was at one of those wildlife things with Mary and Phil and his buddy Don, who spent a lot of time on the high stool with him. Massachusetts in 2014. Again, the bag boys. There's Glen over here. Unfortunately, when we were here, this is Little Brewster Island, the Boston Harbor Light, when they were restoring it at that particular time. He was over here sitting with Dimitri and Val, taking a rest. He wore this hat quite a bit too, which was his veteran's hat that from when he served in the military. The reason I put this one on here, and this was another one of those, well, I think this was the same tour where he kind of came and went on that one boat ride out to the Chesapeake Tower. This one was at that Coast Guard Museum at Yorktown that has all the Fresnel lenses. And Glen was sort of an add-on for this. Unfortunately, the rest of us had to turn in all kinds of information ahead of time, which was given to the base so that we could get on, into that particular Coast Guard location. But Glen wasn't on the list. And of course, that kind of irritated him. And then for some reason, I can't remember, I don't know, Jeff, do you remember this story about what the problem was with, he didn't have the right ID and he had a military ID?
No, it was, I think the problem was that he had his ID, but they also wanted you to provide a proof of insurance for your car. And he didn't have that for some reason. And they wouldn't let him drive in. So we had to go out and get him.
I just remember he had to get off the bus and we weren't sure he was going to come back. But
I can't, I'm thinking of somebody else then, I'm sorry.
No, because I think he was,
on the bus.
that was, as soon as I saw this photo, I remember they gave him a hard time trying to get on there. And of course, being a veteran, he was particularly annoyed about that. Mary Lou Fortain sent me this picture on the right. This is a classic. The South Carolina, Georgia tour in 2015. Through a lot of work, we were managed to get on the Marine base at Parris Island. And this was John McFarland Mack and Al King and Glenn, who had been to almost every lighthouse in the United States. This was one of the few locations that they had not been to. And of course, being in South Carolina, you know, Glenn found out that we were actually going to get on this base and get down to see the remains of this oil house, which was at the base of the light tower there. So he had to join up. Well, we picked up these two guys and got on the base on the way down to Georgia. But when we got to the museum where the man that was supposed to take us to this location down somewhere in the middle of the base down an old airfield, he wasn't there. I tell you, I was crushed. And they got a hold of him. He'd gone home early. He was sick. And so it's like we just, you know, it was just not going to happen. We all left the base. These guys were, you know, very disappointed. And then the next day, I got a call from this guy and said, well, can you stop on your way back? And we figured out a way to do it. And we contacted these three again. I think Mac was on the tour. It was Al that was joining us, Al and Glenn. And so we picked them up again outside the base, went on the base, got on this bus. We were on the bus, went down to this airstrip, went way back in the woods, got the bus stuck back there, managed to get the bus unstuck, and all for this old oil house. And this is Glenn on the right, celebrating the fact he had now seen every lighthouse location in South Carolina. And at that time, I think Mac had seen every lighthouse with the exception of about 2 or 3, and this was one of them. So these guys, you know, they had found the mother lode. And I want to thank Mary Lou for this one, because this is a classic picture of Glenn going, I have seen the light. All right, here's, I guess somebody can talk about this because I was not on this particular trip. I did notice when we went to, went to Brittany, and I think it was, and we rented bikes. I thought it's the first time that we had done that, but evidently that happened in Belgium. And Jeff, I want to know who else did Glenn ride on the back of that that 2-seater with you?
Yeah, well, you know, this is kind of a surprise at the end of the trip. It was the last day, and I thought it would be really fun to, we had to walk down this long breakwater to get to this lighthouse, and they rented bikes right there. And I was going to surprise everybody and rent everybody bikes. And it went over like a ton of bricks. And so 3/4 of the people like, oh, I'm staying behind, I'm going to go walk around. And some of us adventurous types actually got on bikes and went out. They had one tandem bicycle. And so I went back and I said, well, like people like Darlene and Glenn, I said, you guys, you know, ride on the back of this one with me and I'll take you out there. And sure enough, they did it. And I must have gone back and forth 20 times with different people riding on the back of that bike who were not pedaling, by the way. I was exhausted by the end of that, but it was so much fun. And there's one other thing before, this is not involving the Netherlands tourism, but I was just thinking about this, and the Japan tour, which we haven't talked about, which is really a lot of fun, an unusual trip. It was in 2007. And Glenn, one of the things on our Japan tour, besides lighthouses, was all the different types of strange food that we were being served. And there was one evening where we went to this special restaurant that served gourmet tofu. And at this restaurant, we were served 8 courses of different types of tofu. I think Melissa and I sat at Mary and Phil's table. But I remember looking over at Glenn's table. Every time he gets served a different type of tofu, the look on his face was priceless. And I wish I had a photo of that. But it was, imagine 8 courses of tofu for Glenn, who has a very specific diet that he enjoys. It was a lot of fun. But the Netherlands, the Belgium Netherlands tour was an amazing trip. And it was really great for Glen, because Belgium is known for obviously their beers, and they have an amazing assortment. And we were actually the first time I ever drank beer for lunch was on this trip with Glen.
We all started right at the first, getting a Belgian waffle. When we first arrived on the scene and we were there, we all got Belgian waffles and put whipped cream on them and had them that we ate. And that was a fun memory of Glenn, because he wasn't real sure he wanted to have a Belgian waffle, but he did. He was going to participate.
And that top photo of Glenn with Mary Louisa, the photo to the right, the gentleman in the center, it's Lawrence. And actually right after this tour, they got engaged and got married.
You just reminded me of something that I had forgotten, which, you know, is a way to remember Glenn is, did they have McDonald's in Japan?
They had one very close to our hotel in Osaka at an underground mall. Somehow he found it.
Yeah,
Somehow he found it. I don't know how he managed to discover this thing, but sure enough, he probably found the only McDonald's in Osaka that was in an underground mall. If I remember that correctly, Mary, I think I'm remembering that correctly. Yeah.
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 What do you want to say, Phil?
Well, Glenn actually left us to go to a McDonald's where we were all stuck with our bento boxes.
That's
Your what?
a bento box. It's a traditional Japanese, tray that you get different types of things. And Glenn wouldn't have anything to do with that. You had to find his McDonald's.
Yeah, he was that. Geez, how did I forget the McDonald's? You know, because he'd end up, not going to a dinner if he couldn't. If there was a McDonald's nearby, that's where he'd be. How did I forget that?
Well, and if I understand this right, and Trinity probably could answer this question. I mean, I think he pretty much ate at McDonald's every morning for breakfast. Am I not correct in assuming that?
Every single morning. Every day he went to McDonald's.
He had a special place in his heart for McDonald's.
He did.
Those of you that were on that England-Scotland trip in 2017,
Yeah.
this is where we met Trinity, and Glenn was so proud of her and just, wanted to make sure we all got a chance to meet her and everything. Well, it turned out that, we took her in as one of ours and actually gave her a job. We called her the sweeper, and particularly because of Glenn. A sweeper in a marathon is usually the one who comes along and has to pick up the stragglers or make sure that the stragglers get into the pack, or you put them back in the van and move them on. And so Trinity's job was to, stay at the back of the pack and make sure that you, got everybody there. And sometimes it was Glenn, but he was starting to slow down a little about now. He had that problem with his knee, but he was still game for all this. And this trip, I'm sure was very special for Glenn because he was able to bring Trinity along. And I think that she probably has some memories of this one that she might like to share with us even right now.
Melissa wanted me to mention real quick that regarding the food, Glenn just didn't eat McDonald's. He did have a picky diet. Most of the time one of the reasons why we got to know him so well is because we have a veggie diet, and half the time, maybe 3/4 of the time, we'd find Glenn sitting at our table saying, "What are you eating?" And he said, "I'll have that." So he actually liked a vegetarian diet as well, very much.
Lots of veggies.
Yeah.
Trinity, what do you remember about this trip?
Oh, so many things. Definitely. Can you guys hear me?
Got some feedback.
I'm not sure how. Hang on one second. Let me figure that out.
It sounds like we're in a sci-fi movie.
Okay, how about now?
That's better.
Okay.
I've got something on the computer. And
A lot of things. This trip definitely. What is happening? It's definitely been close to my heart. A lot of memories with all of you guys. Him scaring me whenever we were sleeping in our room because he would put candy in his mouth whenever he went to sleep at night.
No, just a second.
Being able to share that passion with him was probably one of the best things he could have ever given me.
It's one of these Zooms.
And Trinity, I know that one of his roommates before you was Don Broadbent, who he traveled with a lot. And Don Broadbent was very hard of hearing, and he could tolerate what I understand is quite loud snoring. Do you have any problems with that?
Yes, actually. Definitely. I think my main thing was I got used to the snoring. I had headphones. I remembered to bring headphones, so that was great.
Okay.
But just being able to experience that with him when we first climbed that first lighthouse,
Just a minute.
to see the smile on his face and experience that with him was something I will always hold close to my heart. And the stories
Okay.
and the chocolate and the Kit Kats and the ice cream.
Oh, it was Kit Kats.
Yeah, Kit
Yeah,
Kats.
it was
I
a
said
Kit
Twix
Kat.
bars. It was Kit Kats. Oh my
Kit Kats.
I just remember a lot from this tour and just being able to meet all of you guys. He always was so excited for me to meet you guys and just to be able to experience not only another country and another, part of the world with him and climb lighthouses. I actually had a really cool experience when we were in South Carolina. I was so persistent on going and seeing Sullivan's Island. I had to go see Sullivan's. I had to see a lighthouse. And my dad and my mom took me, and I've never seen a lighthouse lit before. And Sullivan's Island happened to be lit the day after his funeral, or the same day as his funeral, something like that. So it was,
Yes, I get it.
it was really emotional, and it was really incredible just to be able to share that passion with him for those 17 days in Europe we were in. So
I just finish up here with Glenn never met a woman he didn't want to put his arm around. And he just loved everybody, and these are just a few of those people that benefited from his friendship. I love this picture of you, Trinity, and your grandfather here. And I think that's on a Suter Lighthouse in England. And then again, here he is with Darlene, Eva, Holly, Leanne. So, I like this one here with Leanne. It's like, he's holding forth and explaining something. I think this was at the Anne Hathaway garden, when we went to Avon or Stratford to view Shakespeare's house. And, just some other candid shots of him and some of his, closer friends on these tours. Steve Valder, I know he was real close friends with, and of course with Mary and Phil. And Don was one of his drinking buddies. And then here's just a couple of this one here The upper left-hand corner one here is one of my favorites. This was actually at the Merry-Go-Round Museum in Sandusky, Ohio. And I used to tease him after I showed him this, that this is how he felt after he rode on the merry-go-round on those horses. He just got all wore out and had to go take a nap. It also shows him, and a lot of you, half the pictures you see, he's got his glasses hanging from his shirt, like there, down here, and almost every picture where he's got a t-shirt on because he needed those cheaters, but he never had a pocket to put them in. This one up here, I'm not sure this was, but I just call this the thinker, you know, and I'm not sure where we took that. Cindy Cool just sent me this one. This one was from a more recent tour of Lake Erie. And he was a collector of the stamps, but he was also always very particular about making sure that the stamp got in there just right. And I think Mary Lee's trying to show him exactly where to put it here.
It's funny, Skip, that you said that, because he actually lost a pair of his glasses on our trip and he was so mad.
Yeah, I'm sure. And first trip I took with the, when I rode with Jeff Gales on the Gulf Coast tour, I think it was in 2009 or 10, I wrote a song that was done to the tune of On the Road Again by Willie Nelson. And Glenn used to tease me about it. He didn't hear, I don't think he was on that trip, but on a trip after that. And I sang this song and he reminded me that I didn't sound anything like Willie Nelson. And well, or look like him for that matter. But every time when we were going to get on the bus on future tours, he'd just go on the road again and then climb on the bus. So this is, these were the words to the first paragraph or the first stanza of that. And I can say, you know, just seeing, you know, I can't wait to see the lights again, because that's really, you know, was his thing. That's what I've got. And I hope that that brought back some memories for some of you. And what we would like for you to do now is just, if you have something you'd like to share with the rest of us, we'd really like to hear it and we could tag on it. Go ahead, Mary Lou.
I just want to know, does anybody know exactly how many tours Glenn went on and does he hold the record?
I think Mary and Phil hold the record. According to our records, he was on 28 tours. That doesn't count ones that, you know, where he just went to one lighthouse, but that's probably because he'd been on a regular tour. Plus he did a lot of them on their own. Hey, Mary, how many tours did you guys do or still doing?
I don't remember the exact number, but it's probably 40.
So you got to hold the record. But again, the last one he was on was that Lake Erie tour in 2019, which of course was, you know, just a little over, you know, maybe less than a couple of years ago. And the first one being 2003. So he went on tours for 16 years. One of the things I was surprised that I didn't get a picture of was Glenn standing in the door of a lighthouse, because he always had somebody take a picture of him standing in the doorway of the lighthouse with his camera. But for some reason, I never got a picture of him standing, in a doorway. And I always,
He had a hard time, like, not like he sent pictures in.
oh yeah, he was pretty challenged when it came to sharing pictures, you know, like he couldn't really send them on his computer. And when we would send him pictures as attachments, well, he couldn't open an attachment. And so you had to I had to actually get them printed, put them in an envelope and send them to him. So he was a little bit challenged that way.
He might have been challenged electronically, but Glenn made it a point to stay in contact with, at least with us at the society, to meet personally. He'd always call, usually a couple times a month, just to see how we're doing. I mean, he really made it a point to stay connected. I think I would assume he did that with everybody, hopefully, at least everybody on the call. He was just had such a kind heart and a easygoing personality. He can be quite stubborn at times, but deep down, he was a really, really wonderful guy.
Well, I got a birthday card from him every year, so this year is going to be kind of sad, not, gee, here's my birthday card. He always remembered.
Well, it's easy to remember when you're born on Christmas Day.
Well, you can remember, but then to get a cent,
Well,
all
that's
different
true.
issue.
That's true.
But he did that for the last 7 years, I think. He sends me a birthday card every year.
When I was working at the office, it was always made my day when I go, U.S. Lighthouse Society skip speaking, and I hear, "This is Goose Creek." That's the way he would always refer to himself. And I think Roger Nelson's the one who sent an email or put a message somewhere that basically said that Glenn always said that Charleston, South Carolina was a suburb of Goose Creek. Was real proud to be from Goose Creek, South Carolina.
I think it was interesting.
Nobody was a better representative of that town than Glenn.
One of the things I remember about him was his trips into the gift shops. And the one that stood out the most was a gift shop that was on St. Mary's Island when we were there in the Scilly Islands. Well, we all went back and forth. We went, spent a lot of our money, but we also had, Diane, we all had a great time and bought lots of stuff. I'm wearing a t-shirt that is from the Scilly Islands. So it's one of my memories of him, but he loved going into the gift shops.
But the strange thing is that he didn't wear the t-shirts, or he'd wear them once and then he'd take them home and put them in a bag, if I remember correctly.
Wonder what's going to happen to all those t-shirts, Trinity? Any idea what's going to happen to all his t-shirts? I think I just lost her.
No, I'm right here. Hang on. Hi.
Oh.
I'm gonna take all of his t-shirts and I'm gonna make a quilt out of them. And then I'm gonna also do something for the kids. So the kids will have something of him. He's got 3 totes full of Lighthouse shirts. I probably have enough to make like 3 quilts.
I can believe it.
I would think he also had a ton of Lighthouse pins.
Oh, yeah.
Because every trip he went on, by the time he got to the end of it, that hat would be loaded with pins. Pins and t-shirts, postcards too. He used to buy a lot of postcards.
Yeah.
Lighthouse tour he went on, he always sent me a postcard growing up. So I have all those saved back. I got to go through my old room at my parents' house. I'm still trying to move out, but I have all of those in a photo album. And so yeah, as soon as we're able to get all of his shirts and everything, I'm giving
That's a really cool idea.
Yeah. That way, I eventually I am probably gonna have children of my own, and I want my kids to know who he is. They will know who he is. And I want them to also have a piece of him too. So seeing a quote that I'll have, they'll know, like, wow, this is so cool. Great grandpa went to all these different places, and I'll always have a piece of him at my house too. He's gonna be in my heart, but I know those Lighthouse shirts they meant a lot to him.
Trinity, when you get your quilts done, you should send Jeff a picture.
I will.
I was looking at the photo, that group photo we took from the Netherlands tour. Oh, wait, that was the one, what tour were you on, Trinity? The Scotland and England tour.
The Scotland and
I was looking at that group photo, and I think that photo was taken about 3/4 of the way through. And I always remember on these international trips, you get halfway through them and you're tired and, you know, you want to get back to normality. And I could tell you're just really exhausted. And then by the last night on the farewell dinner, it's like, you don't want to say goodbye and you don't want to leave, you know, you want to continue the adventure. And that's the way I feel about losing Glenn. You know, it was too soon. You know, I want to continue the adventure because he meant so much to us.
Jeff,
Yeah.
I didn't want, it was a picture I didn't send, but I have one. I was taken in Scarborough on the England-Scotland trip. And you're talking about Glenn with the camera and wanting his picture. He's leaning over the railing of the balcony. If you remember, the hotel was way up on the hill, and he's photographing town from above it. And all I have is his rear end, the back of him. And it was just so funny. And he tried to get the camera from me to get rid of it, but I wasn't going to let him get rid of it. I should have sent it, but I had sent others.
Well, if anybody finds more pictures that they have of Glenn, they want to share them, just send them to me and I'll filter them out to everybody. If you find a funny one or one that brings back a special memory.
Because that's a good one.
Okay, yeah, I'll send it out to everybody. If anybody else has one too, I'll do that.
I got a couple stories I'd like to share, if that's all right. Mary's going to tell you about getting planted.
In England, 2007, Phil and Glenn liked to go to the pubs when we went to a town for lunch. And I didn't want to spend my lunchtime in the pub. So I wanted to go out for a walk. So I would go with them to the pub and then I would do my walking. And at one point I mentioned, somehow I said, okay, I want to plant you guys and go for my walk. And from then on, Glenn always wanted to know, where are you going to plant us, Mary?
So it was so she could find us when she got back from. And then in Ireland, got a million stories, of course, but these two stuck out. In Ireland, Mary's kind of known for being able to find herself anywhere. When we go out to the restaurants, group dinners, and we want to leave early, and we leave early, we usually have a train behind us because Mary knows the way back. And we in Ireland, we were on the city wall, and we were walking around, looking down, enjoying ourselves. And all of a sudden, we look down, and there's Don, Broadbent, and Glenn. And they got the map, and they're going, twisting it 90 degrees, then twisting it 90 degrees, and obviously lost. And they looked up and they saw Mary, and Glenn said, look, we're not lost anymore. There's more, but that's enough. He also collected coins.
So do you mean like foreign coins or?
Yeah, proofs. You know, he tried to get a proof set if he could of the coin.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I remember when we went on our the Belgian Netherlands tour, I think that was the first time, or maybe the only time, he got pickpocketed in Belgium.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
Wayne made a point to tell everybody to be careful and not to watch your wallet. And I guess he was in the main courtyard there and wherever we were staying that evening. And the story he told me was that a gentleman approached him asking him if he wanted any help or wanted a tour guide or to ask whatever, and got too close to him and Don. And before he knew it, that was it. His wallet was gone. And we spent that evening canceling all his credit cards. And then, by the way, after moaning about losing, getting your wallet stolen, Wayne and Sally took a extended trip to, I guess, to France to do wine tasting and what have you. And sometime on that tour in France, he got his wallet stolen. So, it happens to the best. What is that? The story, moral of the story is don't carry a wallet in Europe.
Didn't Glenn lose his wallet in France in that southern France
He
tour?
might have too. Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
I think you took a day when everybody else was doing something else, and you took him back there to that spot to look for it.
You're right. I did. Yeah. So maybe he lost it a few times, maybe. I don't know. So he didn't lose it. I mean, I think the one in Belgium, he was pickpocketed. The one in France, he may have actually dropped out. I don't know.
Yeah, I think in France, definitely he was pickpocketed, and or in Belgium, and in France, he just lost it.
Yeah. But he was okay with it. You know, he wasn't too upset. He was fine. Wayne lost about $500 in cash, I think.
Oh.
I said, Wayne, why are you carrying so much cash around with you? And he said, that's what credit cards are for. But anyways.
Jeff, you said that that one tour was the first time you ever had a beer at lunch.
In Belgium, that was the first time I ever had a beer with him. Yeah.
I had never had a beer for lunch or around lunch until I was with you and Melissa and Grandpa in Scotland and England. So it kind of made a full circle.
What a great influence, huh?
That whole trip, Grandpa refused to buy me a drink, and I could drink legally there. I was so excited. And we got there, telling the girl was like, nope, it's 21. And then we found out later on throughout the tour that it was 18 and I was 19 at the time. And he's like, well, I'm not buying you a drink. And I said, okay. And,
yeah. And that's why Trinity was still with Glenn and I and Melissa. And Melissa doesn't drink beer either, but she does drink cider. And we got Trinity onto apple cider.
Well, you know, Trinity, the fact he wouldn't buy you a beer, you know, isn't surprising because he never bought anybody else a beer either.
That's not true.
It is very true.
It is true.
He also liked Magnum.
If he bought you a beer, it was an anomaly.
No, all through Ireland, and then when we got back, and on the next trip, I had to buy him blizzards when we hit a Dairy Queen.
Phil's right though. Glenn also searched out those Magnum bars. Well, you could eat those all day and night.
that was the first thing we did when we got to Scotland and England was look for Magnum bars. I'm like, you don't want to walk the town? He's like, no, I want a Magnum bar. Okay.
I know a few other people that I can see pictures on the screen that were like that too.
Yeah, he wasn't the only one.
I won't mention any names, but I see her laughing.
So
Well, if anybody has any other comments, now would be the time to share them. It's good seeing all of you. I know we're all pretty well tired of being locked in.
I remember was
our last tour to Brittany. We thought, well, you know, it'll probably be the last one we'll go on, but not having been on one now for a couple of years, starting to miss them. And even if it's to some place that we have been before, if it just, you know, I really miss it. It's something that I didn't, you know, I thought, well, you know, okay, that's fine. But I found out I miss the people more than the lighthouses. And of course, Glenn's at the top of that list. I'll miss that, you know, hey, Skip, on the road again.
We could always go back to Maine. I think I've been 4 or 5 times, right, Jeff?
Yep.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind going back there either, but as soon as we feel comfortable traveling like that, we'll end up going somewhere. I have no idea, but.
Nick, Mary, did you have something you wanted to say?
on the Scotland, Ireland trip, on Scotland, England trip, I remember how he had, when we were in Edinburgh, he just had certain places he needed to go. You know, he was like, okay, goodbye, I'll see you later.
So
He was
true.
very independent. He would definitely make the Lighthouse tour into what he wanted it to be, that's for sure.
And I can remember he was saying on the trip that he was told in no uncertain terms to keep an eye on Trinity. And we were at one lighthouse where we're walking back toward town to the bus, and he's taken off, and she had to go find him and chase him.
Yes, always. Always I was looking for him. I was so glad he wore that neon orange jacket and that red hat because I could always find him somewhere. Until we went to was it Windsor Castle? And I completely lost him. Like he walked back to the bus and he didn't tell anybody. And he actually walked back to the bus to get McDonald's. I came so close to giving him a piece of my mind that day because he had me scared to death. I can't thank you guys enough for doing this. It really does mean a lot to us. My family's on here too. They don't really know how to work Zoom. But hearing the stories and seeing the pictures you guys have and just you guys being able to do this means so much to me and so much to my family. And I love you guys so much. I really do.
We love you.
He's passed that on to me, so don't be surprised if you see me on a Lighthouse tour.
You let me know which one you're going on and we'll go on it.
Me too.
Might be the reason for all of us to get back together, huh?
Yes, yes. I have to do at least one more now, just in his honor at least. So
There you go. All right, Jeremy, Jeff, I think that's it. Thank you all for joining us. We will always remember him. He truly is an unforgettable guy.
Yeah.
I just want to add, this has been recorded. This will be posted online probably within a
great.
couple of days. Yeah, so you can watch it again on YouTube and the USLHS website. So this was great.
Yeah, I had a number of people tell me that they couldn't, it was kind of short notice, and that they couldn't join us. And I know Leanne Nitschke would have been here, but I think she's on the South Carolina tour right now. And there's probably a few others on that would really appreciate that, Jeremy. So I'm glad you did that.
Yeah, somebody asked on Facebook.
All those folks on the South Carolina Georgia tour were all looking forward to getting together with Glenn. He was going to be joining them on a couple of those days and having meals with them. So they're mourning along with all of us at the moment.
His goal was 30 tours. And he asked me to go on one, and I just couldn't go. But yeah, 30 tours and that red cap and the Auburn jacket. And I told him all those shots that I took, every pastoral scene, there was a red cap. We climbed up to that Roman place, with the wall. Oh my word, that was really something. But he sure imparted a love for the Lighthouse's Trinity, and we love you very, very much.
Jeremy, just a thought.
Yeah.
I'm looking at your background photograph. When I talked about the picture of him leaning over the railing,
that's the view he was getting.
Picture he was taking.
Exactly. Yeah, I was thinking that when you said that. That's pretty much the view from our hotel.
Right.
And actually, one of my nice memories of that tour is the only one I did with Glenn and Trinity, of course. But one of my nice memories was I walked all the way down by myself down to the beach there in Scarborough. And I remember there was like a series of stairs you had to take to get down there. And I was coming back up, and Trinity and Glenn were at one of the landings. I remember we chatted for a couple of minutes, and the two of you just looked so happy there. I just remember that really well. So that's why I put that view up there. I also remember Glenn kind of wandering off when we were in Berwick upon Tweed in England. But I remember that nobody was angry or anything. We had trouble finding him to leave there, but it was like, I had the feeling if it was anybody else, people would have been angry, but everybody was okay with that.
On that tour, remember that crazy hotel we were in Stratford on Avon? And
Oh, yes.
all those weird corridors and stairs and stuff. And I finally caught Glenn and Trinity wandering around. They couldn't find their room. And Glenn's bag was really super heavy. And I ended up carrying that bag like 3 times around that hotel, up and down stairs before we found the room.
Yeah, well, that was
He didn't
crazy.
even buy me a beer.
Our room was so tiny. Do you remember that, Marcia? I think our beds were right next to each other and you had to climb over a bed in order to get out to the bathroom. Yeah.
It was a nice snuggle, Nancy.
Yeah. That's true. So true.
Yeah, in the overall scheme of things, I've only known Glenn about 16 years now, but I feel like I've known him my whole life.
Yeah.
Me too.
You're
He called
lucky.
my daughter and I on April 4th, the week before he passed. And Glenn was the kind of person that wanted to know everybody and he wanted to bring everybody together. And about 2 months previous to that, he was determined to meet Bill Marshall, the jeweler in Lakeland, Florida. And because I had told him, you two are so much alike and on. And my husband absolutely adored Bill. And he showed up at the jewelry store in Lakeland, Florida on a Saturday. And my girlfriend of my life, Carol, he made her take a picture. He's got, like you said, his arm around Carol and around Mary, the lady that was his friend and driving him there. And he stopped everything in the store. And I said, you got to understand, Glenn, sometimes jewelers do leave the store and they have other things to do. So that was delightful. And he wanted to meet my daughter. He called us at Christmas. We were having Christmas dinner. And so we listened to Glenn and all his stories then. And then the week before, and he kept shouting, Melanie, Melanie, so what a wonderful man, Trinity, that we got to share him with Melanie too.
Yeah, he was a wonderful man. I'm blessed I was able to share him with everyone and that we were able to do that trip and meet all of you.
Phone thing, me.
It means that they're attending by phone instead of by.
Okay, Jeremy, well, if anybody else doesn't have anything to say, additional, if you think of something or you have a photo or you just want to share something with everybody, send me an email, give me a call, and I'll make sure to get it out to everybody so we can all, have additional memories as time passes on. And I know Skid made a really lovely posting on Facebook about Glenn with some great photos. And we certainly can start expanding on that too.
That was great.
Thank you for doing that.
Thank you all for your condolences when emailing me. I'm gonna print all those out and put it in his photo book too. And any pictures you guys have, send them my way. I loved seeing the one with him in the raincoat. That was pretty funny. And I don't have the picture of me kissing his cheek at the lighthouse. So if anyone has that, please send that over to me.
I'll send that. That's when I took, and we put it on the website, so I'll get that to you.
Thank you, Jeremy, for
It
setting
was
this
great
up.
to see everybody.
Thank you,
Love ya.
See y'all.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye guys, love you. Thank you
Bye.
again.
Thank you, Trinity. Talk to you later.
See you all next time.
Thanks, Jeremy. Thanks, Skip.
For a happy occasion, let's hope.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely, Nancy. Good point.
I can't wait to see the lights again.